Hello everyone and welcome to Eon's Edge. Today I'm bringing you a look at the Kansept Convict. Sheepdog knives designed. This is also an Apex list knife. Specs on this, we got 154 cm and a full flat grind, stonewashed, Warncliffe style blade. We've got a liner lock with good lockup. This has nested liners that have been milled out for weight relief. Covered by carbon fiber scales on both sides. We've got ceramic bearings that it's riding on and a spring steel pocket clip. There is 3 inches of usable fine edge. We've got a scale length of 4 1/4, tip to tail length of 7 1/2, and 3.6 ounces, so pretty light for the overall weight. My first impressions. First of all, it's certainly a cool looking knife. I mean, good looking knife, yep, there you go, bam, right? Has a good look to it, pretty light. I love the blade. Good size spine on this thing, right? Comes down to a nice point, full flat grind, straight edge here on the bottom. Decent sized blade hole cut out, I like that a lot. Even someone like myself who's not really great at flicking knives, I can get this out there solidly each and every time. So the tuning on the knife is pretty good. I also like that there's not a ton of billboarding. There's Kansept here, 154 cm there, and a little sheepdog knives, the designer's logo back here with the word Convict. So good, not too bad on the billboarding. I dig that as well. Issues or dislikes with the knife. Sadly, there's a few for me. So first of all, the ergos are not great. If you're in this backhand position here, which I think this is where they generally intended the knife to be held. I have large glove size hands. You can see I can just barely get 4 fingers on there. So not a huge knife, not a small knife either. Kind of in that medium category, right? So that isn't too bad. I'm not sure whether this was meant to be a sharpening choil or a finger choil, but it's a terrible finger choil. Unless you have medium or smaller size fingers, you're gonna hate this. And there's this weird point here right where your finger would go that pushes right into the bone of your hand. So I'm not really a fan of that either. So if you have, medium large or larger fingers than that, you're probably not going to like that. The pocket clip on this knife, honestly, it's awful. Not just because it's sprung steel and it's not deep carry, but also because you just can't get your hands on it with this big spoon on the front of it. It just digs into your hand right there and creates a hot spot in your hand almost immediately. That's just not a comfortable clip at all. I'm really not sure what the philosophy was on this. I measured it. There's just over 7/8 of an inch, so almost an inch of knife sticking out of your pocket. They did use 2 inline button head screws, and that makes me wonder if this knife should have had some kind of milled clip. Maybe they went with the spring steel to keep the cost way down. I'm really not sure, but not super functional. The couple times I did get to carry the knife, I did catch clothing and stuff on the spoon because it sticks out up in the air so high. Just not a very well thought out design on the pocket clip at all. And finally, I mentioned it earlier, but the point here doesn't lend itself to holding the knife up in this grip. You really can't find a spot except for this one grip here where you can hold your hands. Like I said, there's a lot of discomfort here with the clip. It just is high. It doesn't feel good. It takes away from all the nice work that they did rounding off all the edges on the scales. If you move up a little bit in this position, the clip still digs into your hand. So like I said, unless you have really small fingers, you're probably not going to want to hold it up here. You're more than likely going to be holding it back here. Is not too bad when you grab it like this if you're using it for utility cuts. But overall, ergonomics on this knife, I don't know what the designers were really thinking ultimately. And I'm not a fan of the clip, not a fan of this at all. There's a few things. I love the blade from the pivot from here forward. The knife's great. I would have made this choil bigger, or just eliminated this as a possible finger choil altogether. I'll talk more about that in just a moment. So again, I'm just not loving the ergonomics on this knife, even though it's pretty cool looking. But let's do a couple size comparisons just so you can see what other knives it's in the same class with. Let me show you an inexpensive knife that I think is in a very similar size range. It's not as expensive and has great ergonomics. That would be the CJRB Pyrite Wharncliffe. So as you can see, these knives are very similar. The CJRB is thinner. The Convict is definitely thicker. But there we go. We've got, a pretty similar size knife. Now, by comparison, this has a reasonable finger choil on the front of it that you can put your hands on, and a nice rounded area here. So your front finger can fit in there. There's also some blade jimping on the top, which is lacking on the Kansept Convict. And it's a button lock, and this is a very inexpensive knife. These knives typically sell for a reasonable amount less than the Kansept knife does. And then let me show you another knife that's really, really cool. It's in the same size. It doesn't get enough love. This is the Miguron Mayoral. And this is pretty much the exact same size. The difference here is the ergonomics on this knife are fantastic. You get a huge amount of space here to put almost any size finger. You can hold this knife back here. You can hold it up here. The choil is enormous on this knife. Very similar amount of usable edge on this knife. I understand they're two different blade shapes, but this is a knife that has an anodized titanium pocket clip, beautiful tail scale texturing, and a great action on it. So these two knives are in the same size category, but the ergonomics on them are wildly different, with the edge going for sure to the Miguron. One other quick point, Kansept does also give you a pouch to put this in, but it's not a carrying pouch. It doesn't have a belt loop or anywhere to pass a belt through or anything like that. It's more just a place to store the knife, which is nice and fine, because obviously they're expecting you to pocket carry this. Maybe they expected you to carry this on a belt and then decided not to do that and throw a clip on it after. That would explain the crazy pocket clip design. Anyway, let me summarize. This knife retails for around $136, but in the real world, this particular version of it can be found for between $95 and just over $100. You do get a solidly built knife with good fit and finish. I'll give them that. Their website shows a different version of this knife where they've eliminated the finger choil and just made a sharpening choil that starts here about where the plunge grind is. That makes more sense to me, simply because the knife would typically only be comfortable being held in this kind of hammer grip or maybe in a modified Filipino grip position and not up here in the choil. But they do still use this same wire pocket clip design, which doesn't seem to be all that great. Again, if you were able to replace this with some kind of milled clip, that would probably move the spacing back a little bit and put probably only about this much of the knife, somewhere maybe right in here sticking out instead of almost a full inch. But I just don't understand that at all, other than being a cost savings issue. So when you look at all those things, it's hard for me to justify buying this knife. There are some Kansept knives I love. For instance, I love the Goblin and the Goblin XL. There's a few other models of Kansepts that I've had my hand on that I've thought are really, really well designed. This one, not so much. So sadly, I'll have to pass on the Convict. Maybe a future version of this will have some other improvements besides the finger choil and the pocket clip, but I just don't see this as an all-around well thought out design. Love the blade on this thing. If I could have this blade with a more ergonomic handle and back half, I would be pretty stoked. But for now, I'm going to pass on the Convict. So there you have it, folks. There's my honest review of the Kansept Convict designed by Sheepdog Knives. I hope you've enjoyed this review, found it interesting. If you have, please consider hitting the like button. Also, consider subscribing to my channel for notifications on future reviews. Thanks as always for watching, everyone. I appreciate it, and stay sharp.